I keep only one photograph on the wall of this cell. It's yellowed with time, but his eyes are still so clear. My Michael, on our 40th wedding anniversary. He was supposed to visit me today. Instead, I am visiting his memory. The world sees me as a monster, an old woman who took the life of her own flesh and blood. Her granddaughter. They use words like unnatural, cold-blooded. They don't know what it feels like to watch a darkness grow within your own family. A darkness that lies with a smile and kills without remorse. They accuse me of murder. But what do you call it when you have to kill a monster to save your family? What do you call it when the system fails, and the only choice left is the one that brings you to this very place? This is not a story about regret. This is a story about consequences. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be spread, even if they shake your beliefs. There are stories, no matter how painful, that must be told. Here, where I am now, the days are all the same. I wake up early, make my bed carefully, and I am thankful for another day, even with the limitations. I have my reading nook near the small window, where the light enters timidly for a few hours. My companions are the books I get from the library and the conversations I have with the other ladies who, like me, carry heavy stories in their hearts. Talking has become a pastime in these last few years. It's funny how we value words when they are one of the few luxuries we have left. Before, I spoke little. I was more of a listener. Now, every shared story is a small freedom. My wrinkled hands no longer embroider. They only clasp together as I listen. The space where I am is simple. A narrow bed, a small table, a chair. On the wall, I have only one old photograph, yellowed by time. My Michael and I, on our 40th wedding anniversary. He was supposed to visit me today. Instead, I am visiting his memory. It was the last photo we took together. His kind eyes, his calloused carpenter's hands holding mine. Sometimes I spend hours looking at it, trying to understand how the love that built that life could also be the thing that ended it. What I am going to tell is not easy. It is a story about how love can transform into something we no longer recognize, and how blood ties, the very bonds meant to protect us, can sometimes be the most dangerous. This story started many years ago, when I was just a young girl full of dreams, long before I understood how someone from our own family could bring such darkness into our home. They have already told me that I should regret it, that I should beg for forgiveness every day. But how can you regret protecting the one you love? How can you ask for forgiveness for doing what no one else had the courage to do? These are questions that accompany me on long nights as I look at the ceiling and remember Michael's face, the warmth of his hand in mine, and how everything changed on that fateful day. They have already told me that I should regret it, that I should beg for forgiveness every day. But how can you regret protecting the one you love? How can you ask for forgiveness for doing what no one else had the courage to do? These are questions that accompany me on long nights as I look at the ceiling and remember Michael's face, the warmth of his hand in mine, and how everything changed. But to understand how I got here, I need to go way back. I need to tell you about my childhood, about how I was raised, and how I learned from an early age that family is the most precious asset we have. I was born in a humble little house in rural New Jersey, the daughter of Walter and Catherine. My father worked the land, one of those men with calloused hands and a soft heart. My mother was a seamstress. She made dresses for the young women in the region. We were a simple family, but we never lacked the main thing: love and respect for one another. I had two older brothers, Dennis and Martin, who from an early age helped Dad with the farm work. Our house was small, but cozy. The wooden floorboards that Mom swept every day with a simple broom, the walls that Dad reinforced before each rainy season, the wood-burning stove that warmed the house on cold mornings and gave off that smell of freshly brewed coffee that I can still feel in my memories to this day. The large backyard, where Mom grew herbs for tea and spices for cooking. It was there that I played with my rag doll, made by my mother's skillful hands. Life was simple, but it had its own beauty. We would wake up with the rooster's crow before the sun even came up. Mom was already up preparing coffee for Dad, which he took to the fields. After he left, we would help with the household chores. Sweeping the house, washing the dishes, feeding the chickens. Only then could we play a little before going to the small rural school, which was a half-hour walk from our house. At school, I was a diligent student. I loved to read, although there were few books available. The teacher, Miss Anglang Peterson, said I had a good head for studies, but studying beyond the 4th grade was a luxury that a farmer's daughter couldn't afford at that time. So I learned the basics: reading, writing, and arithmetic. The rest of my education came from life and the teachings of my elders. My best friend was Haley, the neighbor's daughter. We spent hours playing house, with dolls, and singing Ring around the rosy. On hot summer afternoons, we would go to the creek that crossed her father's land, and we would sit with our feet in the water, talking about what our future would be like. We dreamed of marrying good men like our fathers, having healthy children, a clean and tidy house, simple dreams of simple girls. On Sundays, the whole family would get dressed up to go to the small local church. Mom would put on her only good dress, the one she kept in a box with cedar chips to ward off moths. Dad would put on his only cologne, a gift from my godfather. We children wore the clean clothes that Mom set aside, especially for that day. After the service, it was customary for families to gather on the church lawn to chat, exchange news, and organize community projects. It was on one of those Sundays that I saw Michael for the first time. He had come with his family, who lived on the other side of town. He was a quiet boy, with a gentle gaze but firm hands, someone who had known hard work from a young age. His father was a carpenter, and Michael was learning the trade, creating pieces that people said were so beautiful they seemed drawn, not carved from wood. When our eyes met, I felt a warmth in my chest that I had never felt before. I was 15 at the time, and he was 17. Life in the country taught me a lot about nature, about the cycle of things. I saw the sunrise and sunset every day. I watched plants grow from seed to harvest. I learned to respect that natural cycle, to understand that everything has its time. But I also learned that sometimes nature can be cruel. Storms that destroyed the crops, droughts that killed the animals, diseases that took away loved ones. My grandmother used to say that life gives and life takes away, and that one needed to accept God's will. It was at 16 that I had my first sorrow. Dennis, my older brother, drowned in the same creek where Haley and I used to play. It was a Sunday after a heavy rain that flooded the creek. He went to rescue a calf that was trapped, and the current swept him away. They found his body 2 days later, lifeless. I saw my father, a strong man who never showed weakness, cry like a child. I saw my mother, always so talkative, become silent for weeks. It was the first time I understood that death can take more than just a person. It also takes a piece of those who are left behind. That loss changed our family. Dad became quieter, Mom more worried. Martin, my other brother, took on Dennis's responsibilities on the farm, maturing before his time. And I learned that life is fragile, that we can lose someone we love in the blink of an eye. Maybe that's why I became so attached to the idea of having my own family, a little corner where I could protect my loved ones. Michael and I started dating when I turned 17. It was a courtship, as was done in the old days, respectful, with him visiting my house, always under the watchful eye of my parents. He would bring me wildflowers he picked on the way, small wooden objects he had carved himself, a little bird, a box for my hair ribbons, simple things, but made with so much love that they were worth more than gold to me. We got married when I turned 19. It was a simple party in my parents' backyard. Mom made an apple pie. The neighbors helped with the food. I wore a white dress that had belonged to my mother, adjusted by her skillful hands to fit me well. Michael wore his father's suit, a little big in the shoulders, but he was so handsome that I didn't even notice at the time. The honeymoon was just a weekend in the house he built for us, with the help of his father and friends, on the plot of land his parents gave us. It was a small house with only 2 rooms, but to me it was a palace. The walls still smelled of fresh paint. The furniture, made by Michael and his father, still had that good smell of new wood. The bed had a mattress that Mom made, stuffed with fresh corn husks. And there, in that little corner that was all ours, we began our life together. Michael worked with his father at the carpentry shop during the day, and at night he would come home, always bringing me some little thing. A fruit out of season that he found at the market, a piece of pretty fabric for me to make a tablecloth. I took care of the house, planted some vegetables in the yard, and made bread to sell to the neighbors. It was a simple life, but we were happy. It was a shock when the news came that I was expecting a baby, not because we didn't want one, but because we knew the difficulties. We were young and had little money. The nearest clinic was miles away, and we didn't own a car. But Michael calmed me down. He said we would find a way, that our child would have a good life. We prayed every night that everything would go well. And so, between the simple joys and the daily difficulties, we were building our family, our home, not knowing that many years later that same family would be the source of the greatest pain I have ever felt, and also of the most difficult decision a mother and grandmother could ever make. Our only son, Joshua, was born on a morning of heavy rain. I remember it as if it were today. Michael had to run out to get Mrs. Davis, the midwife, while I bit down on a cloth so as not to scream loudly with the pains. When my baby boy finally came into the world, it was as if a piece of heaven had fallen into my lap. He was so tiny, with a light fuzz on his little head and his eyes squeezed shut, as if the light of the world was still too strong for him. Michael cried when he held his son for the first time. My husband, a man of few words, looked at that little being and said, "I'm going to build a good world for you, my son." It was the most beautiful promise I have ever heard. Joshua grew up strong and healthy. He was a quiet child, similar to his father in temperament, but he had my eyes. Michael insisted that he study. "My son is not going to be limited like we were," he always said. And so Joshua was the first in the family to finish his studies, to go to college. He graduated as a teacher, which was a source of great pride for us. When Joshua was 25, he met Jennifer at a party at the school where he taught. She was young, pretty, from a family in the city. At first, I confess, I had my reservations. Jennifer seemed so different from us. She wore fashionable clothes, had studied at private schools. But who was I to judge? What mattered was my son's happiness. They got married in a bigger event than ours had been. Her family insisted on a ceremony in the large church in the city, with a reception afterwards in a rented hall. Michael and I felt a bit out of place in that environment, but we were happy for our son. Joshua taught for a few years, but the city life and the politics of the school system wore him down. He missed working with his hands. To my surprise, and perhaps to Michael's secret delight, Joshua eventually left teaching to join his father at the carpentry shop. "The wood doesn't lie, Dad," he told Michael. "You carve something, and it's real." He had his father's talent, and seeing them work together became one of my greatest joys. A year after the wedding, I received the news that I was going to be a grandmother. My heart filled with a joy that words cannot describe. Michael immediately began to make a carved wooden crib for the little grandson or granddaughter who was coming. When we found out it would be a girl, he insisted on carving delicate flowers on the headboard for Grandma and Grandpa's little princess. He would say with that gentle smile, "I loved so much." Scarlett was born on a sunny spring morning. She was a beautiful baby, with large, dark eyes and black hair like her mother's. When I held her for the first time, I had a strange feeling. Something in her eyes, a void that I couldn't understand at the time, but I quickly pushed that thought away. It was just a silly impression from an anxious grandmother. Looking back now, I wonder, was that a warning I chose to ignore? We grandmothers, we always want to see the best in our grandchildren. Sometimes, that very hope is what blinds us to the truth. Scarlett's first years were normal, at least apparently. She grew up pretty and intelligent. She learned to talk early, to walk early. Michael and I spoiled her as grandparents usually do. We always brought her gifts whenever we went to visit. We would spend hours playing with her. Joshua was a dedicated father, and Jennifer, although more distant at times, seemed to take good care of the child. It was when Scarlett was about 5 years old that I noticed the first signs that something was not right. We were in our backyard, where I had a small garden. Scarlett found a baby bird that had fallen from its nest, still a fledgling. Instead of calling an adult to help, as most children would, she picked up a small stone and began to poke the poor thing. When I saw her, the little bird was no longer alive. "Scarlett, why did you do that?" I asked, horrified. "I wanted to see what it looked like inside," she replied with a calmness that chilled me to the bone. This is such a chilling moment. It's not the curiosity of a child. It's the coldness of the answer. This is the first warning Elizabeth sees, the first sign that something is terribly wrong, but it certainly won't be the last. I told Michael about it later, and he was worried too. We tried to talk to Joshua, but he downplayed the matter. Dad, Mom, she's just a curious child. Kids do those things sometimes. Maybe he was right. Maybe we were overreacting. But the incidents continued. One day, I found Scarlett in the guest room, where we kept some old mementos. She had taken a porcelain doll that belonged to my mother, a family heirloom. The doll was missing its arms and legs, its face scratched with a red marker. What happened to the doll, Scarlett? It was ugly. I made it prettier, the girl replied with that same empty look. When we told Jennifer about it, she got irritated, not with her daughter, but with us. You left an antique doll within reach of a small child, and now you want to blame her? Frankly, it was the first time I felt a distance opening up between us and our son's family, a distance that would only grow over the years. That was the moment I realized it. Our love for our son, and his love for his wife. They were no longer on the same side. And my little granddaughter, Scarlett, she was standing right in the middle of that crack. As Scarlett grew, the strange behaviors became more evident. At school, the complaints began. She lied constantly. She would invent elaborate stories to get other children into trouble. One time, she said a classmate had stolen her lunch, causing the boy to be punished. Later, they discovered that she had thrown the food in the trash herself. At home, when we visited, she had a different demeanor depending on who was around. With her parents, she was sweet and obedient. When she was alone with her grandparents, she showed another side. She would look at us as if she were evaluating us, as if she were looking for weaknesses. I remember one time, when she was about 9 years old, we were making cookies together. Michael was in the yard fixing a chair. Scarlett looked at me and said suddenly, "Grandma, you know that people die when they get old, right? You and Grandpa are old now." I tried to explain that, yes, we all die one day, but that we still had many years ahead of us. She continued mixing the cookie dough and added, in a voice too calm for a child, "I saw a cat die once. It made funny noises. Do you think people make noises when they die too?" I confess I was speechless. It wasn't just what she said, but how she said it without emotion, without the natural curiosity of a child, just a cold observation. I told Michael about it later, and he was also disturbed. We tried to talk to Joshua again. This time, we suggested that maybe Scarlett needed some kind of professional help. "What are you implying? That my daughter has some mental problem? She's just a smart and curious girl. You're seeing things that aren't there." Jennifer was even harsher. "I always knew you didn't really like her. Now you're trying to invent problems. Maybe it's best if we limit visits for a while." And so it was done. For almost a year, we saw our granddaughter only on special occasions, always under the supervision of her parents. Michael was devastated. He loved that girl so much, despite everything. "Elizabeth," he said to me one night, "is it us? Are we seeing malice where there's just a normal child?" I myself began to question it. Maybe we were judging unfairly. Maybe because we were from another generation, we didn't understand what children are like today. When we were finally allowed to visit more freely, Scarlett was 12 years old. She was bigger, prettier, and seemingly more controlled. On the first few visits, she behaved perfectly. Michael and I began to think that maybe we really had been wrong, until that Sunday afternoon. We were all gathered for lunch. Joshua and Jennifer had gone out to buy dessert, leaving Scarlett with us. Her cousin, Clara, Jennifer's sister's daughter, was also there. Clara was 7, a sweet and shy little girl. The two were playing in the bedroom while Michael and I were tidying up the kitchen. Suddenly, we heard a scream. We ran to the room and found Clara on the floor with Scarlett on top of her, hands around the younger girl's neck. The child was red, struggling to breathe. "Scarlett!" Michael shouted, running to separate the two. "What are you doing?" Scarlett let go of her cousin and stood up, straightening her clothes as if nothing had happened. "We were just playing doctor. I was the doctor, and she was the patient." Clara was crying, still trying to catch her breath. When the girl managed to speak between sobs, she said she wanted to see if I would turn blue. Michael lost his composure for the first time I can remember. He grabbed Scarlett by the shoulders and said in a firm voice, "This is not a game, Scarlett. You could have seriously hurt your cousin. This is dangerous, and it's wrong." It was then that I saw something in her eyes that froze me inside. A look of pure hatred, followed by a smile that had nothing childish about it. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I won't do it again. It was just a game." However, when Joshua and Jennifer returned and we told them what had happened, the story Scarlett told was completely different. According to her, Clara had broken her favorite doll on purpose, and when Scarlett got upset, her cousin started rolling on the floor, pretending she was being attacked. Scarlett said she was just trying to calm her cousin down, and to our horror, Clara, perhaps out of fear, confirmed Scarlett's version. Do you see? Now, that was no longer a child. That was something that had learned how to use fear. It knew that fear is stronger than truth, even an innocent girl like Clara. She was silenced by it. At that moment, Michael couldn't take it anymore. That's not true. We saw what happened. That's when everything deteriorated at once. Jennifer accused us of having it in for her daughter. Joshua, trying to appease the situation, only made things worse by suggesting that maybe we had misinterpreted what we saw. In the heat of the argument, Michael did something he would bitterly regret later. When Scarlett continued to lie, looking him straight in the eye with that little smirk, he lost control and slapped her across the face. It wasn't a hard slap, but it was enough to leave everyone in shock. Scarlett didn't cry. Instead, she looked at her grandfather with those cold eyes and said in a low voice, but clear enough for everyone to hear, "You're going to regret this, Grandpa." That isn't the reaction of a child being disciplined. It is a calculated threat. Michael's act of frustration just gave Scarlett a target, and she will make him pay. Keep listening to hear how she begins her revenge. After that terrible Sunday, nothing was ever the same again. Joshua and Jennifer left our house furious, taking Scarlett and little Clara with them. The last words our son directed at us that afternoon were as hard as stones. "You crossed the line." I never thought my own father, a man who always preached respect, would raise a hand against a child. I don't know when we'll be able to see each other again. Michael stayed up all night, sitting on the porch, his face in his hands. I had never seen him so dejected. "What did I do, Elizabeth?" I lost my mind. I hit a child, our little granddaughter. I tried to comfort him, telling him it was a moment of weakness, but nothing alleviated his guilt. I sat with him until the sun came up, my heart breaking twice. He saw his act as a moral failure, a stain on his soul. I saw it as the first time a crack had appeared in her perfect mask. He regretted his weakness. I realized we were no longer fighting a child. We were fighting something that had no soul. That look of hers, Elizabeth, those words, "You're going to regret this, Grandpa." It wasn't a normal reaction from a child who got slapped. It was something else. In the following week, we tried to contact them several times. We called on the phone, sent messages with neighbors. I even wrote a letter asking for forgiveness. Michael was willing to get on his knees before everyone and apologize to Scarlett if that could fix things. But all our attempts were met with silence. The worst was when Michael tried to visit the carpentry shop where he and Joshua worked. When he got there, Michael's partner told him that Joshua had asked to be left alone, that he didn't want to see his father and needed time. That rejection broke something deep inside my husband. The carpentry shop wasn't just wood and nails. It was his pride, his legacy. It was the quiet language he shared with our son. To be barred from it was like being told he was no longer a father. I would watch him sit by the window, his talented hands that had built our home and rocked our son's cradle now just lying empty in his lap. He was grieving a loss deeper than work. He was grieving the son he thought he knew. Weeks passed, then months. We tried to keep in touch with common friends and neighbors to at least know how the family was doing. That's how we found out that Scarlett had been transferred to another school. Adjustment problems was what they said. At the new school, she quickly became an exemplary student, involved in extracurricular activities, liked by the teachers. "See, you were wrong about her," a well-intentioned neighbor told us. not knowing how much those words hurt. After 6 months without contact, we received a call from Joshua. His voice was different, more restrained. "Dad, Mom, Scarlett asked to speak with you. She said she misses her grandparents, that she wants to make peace." Michael's heart nearly leaped out of his chest. He believed this was the opportunity to rebuild the family, to correct his mistake. We immediately agreed to have them over for Sunday lunch, like in the old days. I spent the whole week preparing everyone's favorite dishes. Michael cleaned the house from top to bottom, tidied the garden, even fixed the rocking chair on the porch that Joshua had loved since he was a child. We were as nervous as teenagers on their first date. When they arrived, Scarlett ran to hug her grandfather. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I lost my head that day, too. I love you very much." Michael couldn't hold back his tears. He hugged his granddaughter tightly, murmuring words of apology. For a moment, everything seemed to be all right again. The meal proceeded with a forced normality. We all avoided touching on the subject that had separated us. We talked about work, the weather, the news. Scarlett was particularly charming, helping to set the table, asking to hear old stories from when her dad was a boy. After dessert, as we were having coffee on the porch, Scarlett asked to show her grandfather a school project. Michael, happy with the apparent reconciliation, followed her to the guest room where she had left her backpack. I stayed in the kitchen talking with Joshua and Jennifer. That's when I heard a noise coming from the room. It wasn't loud, but there was something strange about it. I excused myself and went to check. Upon entering the room, I found Michael sitting on the bed, pale as a sheet. Scarlett was standing in front of him with that same cold smile on her lips. On the bed were some photos. "What's going on here?" I asked, approaching. Michael didn't answer. I picked up the photos and felt my blood run cold. They were photos of dead animals, small animals like squirrels, birds, even a kitten in different states of, well, I don't even want to describe it. Next to them was always Scarlett, sometimes with what looked like a small knife or scissors in her hand. "Scarlett, what is this?" I managed to ask, my voice almost disappearing. "It's my science project, Grandma. I'm studying anatomy." She isn't just hiding her darkness anymore. She's savoring it, rubbing the horror right in their faces. This is a power play. And just when Elizabeth and Michael think they have proof, Scarlett shows them how truly powerless they are. Isn't it interesting how we're all the same on the inside? At that moment, Joshua entered the room. He saw the photos in my hands and snatched them away forcefully. "Where did you find these? Were you snooping through her things?" "No, son. She showed them to us. She said it was a school project," Michael answered, finally finding his voice. Joshua looked at Scarlett, who now had tears in her eyes. Tears that I could swear weren't there seconds before. "Dad, Mom, why are you doing this?" "I just wanted to show Grandpa my pictures from the zoo. They took these horrible pictures from I don't know where, and are saying they're mine." It was as if the floor disappeared from under my feet. The lie was so absurd, so blatant, that I was left speechless. Michael stood up, trying to approach his son. "Joshua, son, you know us. Do you really think we would make something like this up? Look at those photos. Look at her face in them. It's Scarlett." But Joshua didn't want to see. Maybe he couldn't face the truth about his own daughter. He crumpled up the photos, threw them on the floor, and said in a voice that didn't sound like his, "Enough. I tried. I swear I tried to give you a chance. But you can't accept Scarlett. You can't see that she's just a normal girl. Maybe it's better if we don't see each other for a while." Jennifer appeared at the door, looking at the scene with astonishment. Joshua took Scarlett by the hand and left, practically dragging his wife with him. From the front door, we could still hear Scarlett say, in a voice loud enough to reach us, "Dad." Grandma hid my backpack. My zoo pictures were in there. And so our son walked out of our lives again, this time for a much longer period. We were devastated. Michael didn't sleep well, barely ate. I myself felt as if I were in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. "Elizabeth," Michael said to me one night, "I'm scared. Not for us, but for Joshua, for Jennifer, even for that poor girl Clara. There's something very wrong with Scarlett." We spent the next few months trying to convince Joshua to seek professional help for Scarlett. We sent articles about problematic behaviors in adolescence, recommendations for psychologists, even a book about children with behavioral disorders. Everything came back unopened, sometimes with a short note. "Stop this." The situation became unbearable. Neighbors started to comment. Friends took sides. Some saw us as the problematic grandparents who couldn't accept their granddaughter, others as victims of an ungrateful family. That's when Michael had the idea to move. He had an old friend from his youth who lived in another city a few hours away. This friend had offered him a partnership in a small local carpentry shop. Maybe it's for the best, Elizabeth, to give them space? Who knows, with time, Joshua will realize the truth for himself. The decision to leave the city where we had lived our whole lives was difficult, but it seemed like the only way out. We sold our house. Michael sold his share in the carpentry shop to his partner for a value far below what it was worth, just to close the deal quickly. And we left with heavy hearts, but hopeful that time could heal the wounds. Our new life began modestly. The house was smaller than the old one. The carpentry shop needed renovations, but we were together, and that's what mattered. Michael, always a hard worker, threw himself into the new business with enthusiasm. In a few months, he already had a small, loyal clientele, delighted with my husband's talent for detailed woodwork. I started making cakes and sweets to sell. It was something I always enjoyed, and it helped me pass the time to not think so much about the family we left behind. We made some friends, got involved in the local community. It wasn't the life we had planned for our old age, but it was a dignified, peaceful life. We maintained minimal contact with Joshua, phone calls on important dates, Christmas cards. He never came to visit us, and we were not invited to go to his house. About Scarlett, the news was always superficial. She's doing well in school. She won a writing contest. Nothing that would let us know how she really was. And so we spent almost 2 years building this new life, trying not to look back too much, even though our hearts still ached with longing for our only son. Until that Sunday morning, when we received a phone call that would change our lives forever. The call came from an unknown number. I answered while Michael was in the bathroom. "Mrs. Morgan?" The voice on the other end was formal, grave. "This is Detective Miller. It's about your son, Joshua." My heart stopped for a moment. At my age, a call from a detective about a relative never brings good news. "What happened to my son? Is he okay?" "Your son is fine, ma'am, but there was an incident. I'd rather not go into details over the phone. Could you come to the precinct?" "It's important that you come as soon as possible." Michael and I left that same morning. The journey back to our old city seemed to last an eternity. Even though it was only a few hours, my mind created the worst possible scenarios. Had Joshua been involved in an accident? Or was it something related to Scarlett? At the precinct, we were met by Detective Miller, a middle-aged man with deep dark circles under his eyes, like someone who hadn't slept well in days. "Mr. and Mrs. Morgan, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, have a seat." He looked at us with an expression that mixed compassion and discomfort. "There was an incident at your son's house. Your granddaughter, Scarlett, made a serious accusation." I felt Michael stiffen beside me. "What kind of accusation?" he asked, his voice low and controlled. "She claims that your son, Joshua, has been abusing her for several years. This is the ultimate betrayal. Scarlett has moved from cruelty to the complete annihilation of her own family. She's willing to destroy her father's life, the man who defended her, and she even has proof. How can Elizabeth and Michael fight a lie this monstrous?" It was as if the ground opened up beneath our feet. Michael jumped up. "That's absurd. My son would never do something like that. Scarlett is lying, just like she's always lied." The detective raised his hands, asking for calm. "I understand your reaction, sir, but we need to investigate all accusations of this nature seriously." The girl gave convincing details, and there's a video she secretly recorded. At that moment, he hesitated, looking at me. "Ma'am, maybe it's better if you wait outside while I show this video to your husband." "No," I replied firmly. "If it's about my son, I want to see it too." The detective nodded reluctantly and turned on a small television set. What we saw in the following minutes was indescribable. A video where it appeared to be Joshua entering Scarlett's room late at night, approaching her bed. "This is a setup," Michael shouted, turning off the set with trembling hands. "My son would never do that. Never." The detective sighed heavily. "It seemed strange to us too, that's why we called you." Joshua vehemently denies it, of course. He says he never entered his daughter's room like that. Jennifer is devastated. She doesn't know who to believe. Scarlett is with social workers now. "And why did you call us?" I asked, still trying to process the horror of those images. "Because your son mentioned that you had concerns about Scarlett's behavior. He said you tried to warn them several times." Michael and I looked at each other. After so much time being ignored, being treated as the villains of the story, finally someone wanted to listen to us. But under what circumstances? We spent the next few hours telling the detective everything. The small dead animals, the elaborate lies, the attempt to harm her cousin Clara, the disturbing photos. The detective took notes occasionally, asking questions to clarify a point. "Do you have any of this evidence? The photos you mentioned, for example?" We shook our heads. Everything had been left behind when we moved. Unfortunately, it's your word against hers, and she has a video, however suspicious it may be. We managed to see Joshua briefly. He was unrecognizable, thin, dejected, his eyes red from crying until he had no more tears. "Dad, Mom, you were right all along. Scarlett, I don't know what happened to her. Where did we go wrong in raising her? She's destroying our family with lies. Jennifer doesn't know who to believe. She's on the verge of a breakdown, and I could lose everything. My job, my freedom, my reputation." It was a brief meeting, supervised by an officer. We promised to do everything in our power to help, to prove his innocence. In the days that followed, we stayed in the city, staying at a small motel. Michael reactivated old contacts, talked with neighbors, with Scarlett's former teachers, trying to gather any information that could help Joshua. I went to the school. I tried to talk to Scarlett's friends, with parents of other students. What we discovered was disturbing. Behind the facade of an exemplary student, there were unsettling rumors. A classmate who suddenly changed schools after a disagreement with Scarlett. A teacher who requested a transfer after accusing Scarlett of cheating on an exam and then withdrew the accusation for reasons never clarified. Small incidents that, in isolation, seemed insignificant, but together formed a worrying pattern. However, nothing was concrete enough, nothing that could compete with a video, no matter how much we suspected its authenticity. It was on one of those nights, returning exhausted to the motel, that we found Jennifer waiting for us in the lobby. She was unrecognizable, her hair disheveled, deep dark circles under her eyes, her hands trembling. "You were right," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I found something terrible." On her tablet, she showed us conversations from Scarlett on a messaging app. They were exchanges with an older boy where she boasted about how easy it was to manipulate her parents, about how she planned to get rid of her father to get her mother's family inheritance. She told him she was going to destroy Joshua, that she was going to accuse him of horrible things, that she had learned to edit videos that no one would suspect. Michael took her hands, trying to calm her. "Jennifer, this is proof. Did you show this to the police?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Scarlett found out I saw it. She deleted everything. These screenshots I saved, she says they're fake, that I fabricated them because I'm having a nervous breakdown. And the worst part is, they're believing her." That night, we made a plan. Jennifer would go to the precinct the next day with the screenshots. Michael would accompany her, along with a lawyer he had hired to help Joshua. I would stay at the motel, trying to contact the boy with whom Scarlett was exchanging messages. But the next morning, everything changed. We were awakened by violent knocks on the motel room door. It was Detective Miller again, accompanied by 2 police officers. "Mr. Morgan, I need you to come with me." "What happened?" I asked, grabbing Michael's arm. "There was another incident at your son's house." Michael turned pale. "Joshua, is he okay?" "Your son is in protective custody. It's about the girl, Scarlett." The detective hesitated. Then he continued, his voice grave. "She was found unconscious this morning. It seems she tried to harm herself. She left a letter blaming her grandparents for turning her father against her. saying she couldn't stand living like this anymore. My blood froze in my veins. I looked at Michael and saw the same horror in his eyes. "This is a trap," he murmured, more to himself than to the detective. "She's framing us too. Sir, I need you to come with me to give a statement. The situation is serious." The days that followed were a nightmare. Michael spent hours at the precinct, answering the same questions, repeating our version of the events. Joshua was formally charged with assaulting his daughter. Apparently, Scarlett had confessed that the abuse allegations were false, but insisted that her father had beaten her several times. Jennifer tried to show the screenshots to the police, but as Scarlett had predicted, they were considered questionable evidence. And we were the problematic grandparents who had always had issues with the granddaughter, who abandoned the family when they needed us most, who were now inciting the father against the daughter. A week after this nightmare began, Michael had to return to our new city. The carpentry shop couldn't stay closed for so long, and we needed money to help pay for Joshua's lawyer. "I'll be back at the end of the week," he promised, hugging me at the bus station. "Everything will be all right, Elizabeth." The truth always comes out. It was the last time I saw my husband alive. That chilling promise Scarlett made years ago. "You're going to regret this. Grandpa has just been fulfilled." Elizabeth doesn't know it yet, but this accident was an execution. What she discovers next won't just confirm her fears, it will demand an answer. 3 days after Michael's departure, I received another phone call. It was early in the morning, and the shrill ring of the phone tore me from a restless sleep filled with nightmares. It was Frank, Michael's friend and partner at the carpentry shop. His voice was broken, almost unrecognizable. "Mrs. Elizabeth, a tragedy has occurred." The carpentry shop. There was a fire. My heart seemed to stop. "Michael, where is Michael?" The silence on the other end of the line was the most painful answer I have ever received in my life. I don't remember the hours that followed very well. I know that Frank arranged my trip back, that some kind soul accompanied me on the bus, that I arrived in our new city to find only ashes where the carpentry shop that Michael loved so much once stood. The authorities said it was an accident, a short circuit, probably. Michael often worked late, especially when he was worried. They said he must have fallen asleep in the small office he had in the back, that the smoke probably killed him before the flames reached him. They tried to comfort me by saying he didn't suffer, as if that could lessen my pain. The funeral was simple, just as Michael would have wanted. A few friends from the new city, Frank and his wife, 2 or 3 neighbors. Joshua couldn't come. He was still under investigation. He couldn't leave the city. Jennifer sent flowers and a handwritten card with kind words about the father-in-law she had always admired. From Scarlett, nothing. Not a word, not a gesture. In the weeks that followed, I moved like a ghost. I stayed in the house we shared, surrounded by memories of Michael in every corner. His slippers still by the side of the bed, his favorite shirt still hanging behind the door, his scent that slowly faded from the pillows, from the clothes, leaving only increasingly faint memories. Frank took care of the insurance, the paperwork, all the formalities. He had been a good friend to Michael, and he continued to be one for me. His wife, Nancy, brought me food every day. She made sure I was eating. She tried to convince me to go out, not to isolate myself completely. It was Nancy who answered the door that afternoon, about a month after Michael's death. I was in the kitchen, trying to force myself to eat something, when I heard her talking to someone. Then she came in holding a brown paper envelope. "Elizabeth, this came for you. Special delivery. I had to sign for it." The envelope had no return address, just my name and address, written in a handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a small device, a USB drive, and an anonymous note. "This explains everything. Be careful." Nancy stayed with me while we connected the USB drive to the old computer Michael used for the carpentry shop's accounting. There was only one file, a video. What I saw in the following minutes changed my life forever. The video showed the carpentry shop at night. The date in the bottom corner indicated the exact night of the fire. The quality wasn't very good. It seemed to have been recorded from a nearby security camera. It showed someone stealthily approaching the back of the carpentry shop. The figure was hooded, but when they turned briefly to look around, the face was visible for an instant under the light of a streetlight. It was Scarlett. She entered through the back using what appeared to be a key. How did she get a key? I never found out. Maybe she stole it from Michael at some point. Made a copy. The video only showed the exterior, not what happened inside. But about 20 minutes later, Scarlett came running out. A few minutes later, smoke began to appear. The recording continued for a few more minutes, showing the smoke increasing. Then the first flames visible through the windows. It ended with the arrival of the firefighters, already too late. But the most shocking part was yet to come. The video then cut to another recording, apparently made with a cell phone. It showed Scarlett alone in what looked like a bedroom, looking directly at the camera. She was smiling, not like a normal teenager smiles, but with a cold smile that never reached her eyes. "Hello, Grandma," she said, her voice calm, almost sweet. "If you're watching this, it means someone finally did the right thing. I wanted you to know that Grandpa suffered. It wasn't quick, like they're telling you." He woke up to the smell of smoke. He tried to get out. The door was locked from the outside. He screamed. He pounded on the door. He tried to break the window, but I had planned everything. The windows were reinforced, remember? Grandpa himself installed those bars after that break-in last year. She paused, tilting her head slightly to one side, as if contemplating a pleasant memory. When I went in there, he was sleeping. So easy. I put a sleeping pill in his coffee earlier when I went to visit the shop. I told him I wanted to make peace, that I was so sorry for all the confusion with Dad. He believed me. Of course. Grandpa was always so trusting. Nancy let out a choked gasp beside me. I was paralyzed, unable to look away from the screen, unable even to cry. "Do you know why I did this, Grandma?" Scarlett continued. "Remember that slap he gave me? You're going to regret this, Grandpa. I always keep my promises. This is the absolute confirmation. It's not just proof, it's a boast. Scarlett didn't just kill Michael, she savored it. And she wants Elizabeth to know every agonizing detail. Now Elizabeth has the truth. But what can she do when the law has already failed them? Always." She moved closer to the camera, her dark eyes shining with something I had never seen before in a human being. "Now it's your turn to suffer, Grandma. Living alone, knowing your husband died because of you. If you had just left me alone, none of this would have happened. But no, you had to be concerned about my behavior. You had to try to get Mom and Dad to take me to specialists, as if there was something wrong with me." She laughed, a sound empty of any real joy. "There's nothing wrong with me. I'm exactly what I'm supposed to be. And now you're going to live with this, with the truth that no one else will believe. Why would they? Who would suspect a poor, traumatized teenager who just wants a normal life? Everyone will think you've gone mad with grief if you try to tell anyone." The video ended abruptly. I stared at the black screen, feeling something inside me break, and at the same time, something new emerge. A resolution. A certainty. "Elizabeth," Nancy murmured beside me, her voice trembling. "We have to take this to the police. Right now." I shook my head slowly. "No. You heard what she said. No one will believe it. They'll say it's a fake, just like they said about the video she fabricated against Joshua. But we have to do something. She killed Michael. She confessed." I looked at my friend, feeling a strange, calm wash over me. "Yes, we are going to do something, but not in the way you're thinking. The grief doesn't disappear, you see. It just hardens. It turns into something sharp and clear. When you've lost everything, you have nothing left to fear. That is when a cold, terrible calm takes the place of tears." In the days that followed, I made preparations. First, I created a copy of the USB drive and hid it in a safe place. Then I called Joshua. The conversation was brief, painful. He was still under investigation, but things seemed to be improving. Jennifer had finally convinced the authorities to investigate Scarlett's accusations more thoroughly, and some inconsistencies were emerging. "Mom, she asked about you the other day," Joshua said. "She said she wanted to visit you, to comfort you for Dad's loss." I felt my heart race. "And what did you tell her?" "I told her I would talk to you, to see if you were ready for visitors." She seemed eager. Tell her I am, son, that I'll be happy to see her. The trap was set. I knew Scarlett would come not to comfort me, but to make sure I was suffering, to savor her victory, perhaps even to eliminate one more obstacle in case she suspected I knew something. Nancy did not approve of my plan. She begged me to reconsider, to let justice run its course. But what justice would that be? The justice that was on the verge of convicting my son for crimes he didn't commit. The justice that allowed Scarlett to manipulate everyone for so many years. "What are you planning, Elizabeth?" Nancy asked, concern evident in her voice. "Just a conversation," I replied. A conversation between a grandmother and a granddaughter. When Scarlett arrived 3 days later, I was ready. The house was tidy, fresh coffee on the table. I didn't need a plan, or pills, or a secret location. I only needed the truth. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Michael used to read his paper. She played the part of the grieving granddaughter perfectly. "Grandma, I'm so sorry for your loss." "How are you?" she asked, her eyes carefully practicing sadness. "I'm heartbroken, dear," I said, meeting her gaze. "But I am not confused." I pushed the small USB drive across the table. "This came for me." I watched her face. There was no flicker of fear, no panic. She simply looked at the drive, then back at me, and that cold, empty smile I had seen when she was 9 years old spread across her lips. It was a smile of appraisal. She wasn't scared of being caught. She was simply recalculating. "So," she said, her voice dropping the sweet pretense, "the old woman has a secret. What are you going to do? Show the police? They'll say you're a grieving widow who's lost her mind. They'll say you faked it to frame the poor, traumatized granddaughter." In that moment, watching her, I felt an incredible, icy calm. All the years of torment, the questions I wanted to ask, "Why are you like this? Could we have saved you?" They all evaporated. The answer was right in front of me. There was nothing to save. There was no why. There was only a void. "I know," I said quietly. "I know they won't believe me." I looked past her, out the window, at the bird feeder Michael had built. "He loved you, Scarlett. He loved you from the moment you were born. He carved flowers on your crib. Love is a weakness, Grandma," she said, leaning in. "He was weak. Dad is weak. You are weak. That's why I always win." She was right. The love that Michael and I had, the love that made us human, was the very thing she used against us. It was our weakness. And in that final, terrible moment, I knew it also had to be my strength. "What are you going to do with me?" she asked again, almost bored, confident that I too was weak. I looked at her, my granddaughter, my blood, the being who had taken the love of my life from me, who had destroyed my son, and who was already planning her next move. "I'm going to do what no one else had the courage to do, Scarlett," I said, standing up. "I'm going to protect the world from you. This is the moment the entire story has been building toward. The system failed, love failed, and the law failed. Elizabeth realizes that if she doesn't stop this, no one will. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about consequences." I looked at her, my granddaughter, my blood, the being who had taken the love of my life from me, and I made the most difficult decision of my life. "I'm going to do what no one else had the courage to do, Scarlett. I'm going to protect the world from you. What happened next is something I carry with me every day. The weight of the decision, the weight of the act. The details of what happened next, the how, they do not matter. They are a weight I carry every day. What matters is the why. I am not a cold-blooded killer. I am a grandmother who did the only thing left to do to protect what remained. I am not proud. I am not sorry. I did what I had to do, what no system, no institution, no law would do. When it was all over, I went home. I called Joshua to tell him that Scarlett had left early, that she had said she needed to meet some friends in the city. I waited for the alarm to be raised, for the search to begin, and then I did what I needed to do. I walked into a police precinct and confessed. I handed over the evidence of what Scarlett had done to Michael. I told the whole story from the beginning and took responsibility for what had happened to her. The investigation was long. Scarlett's video, confessing to Michael's murder, was considered sufficient evidence to close the case of the fire. The charges against Joshua were dropped, his reputation partially restored. Jennifer eventually found some kind of peace, and I received my sentence with my head held high. I do not deny what I did. I do not seek forgiveness. When the judge asked me if I regretted it, I looked him in the eye and told him the truth. I only regret not realizing the danger she represented sooner. I regret the lives that could have been saved. It's been 14 years since that day. 14 years living within these walls with a routine as regular as the ticking of the old clock in the visiting room. I wake up early, as I always have. I make my bed with the care my mother taught me back in the days of the adobe house. I have breakfast with the other ladies. Yes, there is a special wing for women my age with health problems like mine. Arthritis doesn't let me do many physical activities, but I can still read, talk, and sometimes I even help in the prison garden. People here treat me with a curious respect. The older guards already know my story. The newer ones soon hear the rumors. That's Mrs. Elizabeth, the one who killed her own granddaughter. Some look at me with horror, others with a kind of veiled admiration. Most just leave me alone, which is all I ask. I have my little corner in the library, where I spend a good part of my days. The librarian, Miss Norma, lets me stay beyond the scheduled hours. Sometimes a lady of your age, with your impeccable record in here, deserves some consideration, she says. I think deep down she understands. We never talk about it directly, but she once mentioned that she had a daughter who suffered at the hands of a predator. The way she said the word made me think that maybe she too had taken some action that society would not approve of. Life here isn't bad. I have my meals, my corner to sleep, my little routines. Joshua's visits are what brighten my days the most. At first, he came less frequently, still processing everything that had happened. But over time, the visits became regular, once a month without fail. He comes alone now. He and Jennifer separated a few years ago, not out of blame or resentment, but because some wounds are too deep to heal completely. They maintain a respectful friendship for the sake of the memories they shared before everything fell apart. Joshua rebuilt his life. He went back to teaching at another school, in another city. The students adore him. From what he tells me, he has that same calm manner as his father, that same ability to truly listen to people. Sometimes he brings photos of the projects he develops with the students: community gardens, restoration of green areas, work with the elderly. It seems the pain transformed him into someone even more sensitive to the needs of others. I have some friends in here, women with different stories, but who, like me, reached a point in their lives where the law and conventional morality offered no answers for their situations. We exchange stories, share memories of better times, talk about the children and grandchildren we still have. Once a week, I participate in the craft group. My fingers are not as nimble as they used to be, but I can still do small embroidery, simple knitting. We make pieces that are sold at a charity fair at the end of the year. The money goes to a children's shelter. There's a certain irony in that which is not lost on me. On visiting days, the yard fills with families, mothers with children, grandmothers with grandchildren. In those moments, I feel a pang of pain seeing the other grandmothers playing with their little grandkids. I remember how Michael dreamed of having more grandchildren, of teaching them carpentry, of building wooden toys, as he did for Scarlett when she was little. Destinies that will never be realized. Joshua didn't have other children. I think in a way, he's afraid there's something in our blood, something that can be passed down. I've tried to convince him that's not the case, that Scarlett was a unique case, an anomaly. But I understand his fear. Some shadows are too long. He brings me books on every visit. He knows that reading is my refuge. Through the pages, I can visit places I will never know in person, live lives that will never be mine. I have read more in these 14 years of prison than in my entire previous life. Poetry, novels, history, biographies. I have discovered talents and interests I never knew I had. The other ladies here sometimes ask me for advice. It seems I have achieved a kind of wise woman status among them. Ironic, isn't it? Me, who made the most extreme decision possible, being consulted on matters of ethics and morality. But maybe it's precisely because I crossed that line that I can speak about limits with some authority. The nights are the hardest part. When the lights go out, when When silence falls over the wing, that's when the memories come back with more force. Michael's face, his gentle smile, his calloused hands holding mine. Baby Scarlett's face, before any shadow manifested in those little eyes. The family Sundays, the meals, the laughter, the life we had, the life we could have had. I have nightmares sometimes, not about what I did. Strangely, that rarely haunts me in my dreams. But I dream of Michael trapped in that burning carpentry shop, screaming for help. I wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. In those moments, the cell seems smaller, the air thinner. I take a deep breath, count to 10, and repeat to myself, I did what I had to do. I don't expect to get out of here. My sentence is for life, and at my age, that means the rest of my life. I am at peace with that. I don't think I could live in the outside world again. Here, I have a structure, a routine. Here, everyone knows who I am, what I did. There is no need for explanations or apologies. Life has taught me that sometimes there are no right choices, only necessary ones. And with them come consequences that we must accept. I have accepted mine. That photograph of Michael on my wall is not just a memory, it is a reminder. Love is not just the gentle act of building a home. Sometimes it is the terrible, necessary act of protecting it. I did not find justice in a courtroom, and I did not find forgiveness. Instead, I found a cold, hard peace. The peace of knowing the darkness that hunted my family is finally gone. My life now is small, but it is my own. I did what I had to do. I accepted the consequences. And in the quiet moments, when I look at his smiling eyes in that faded picture, I know that my Michael, the kind man with the calloused carpenter's hands, would understand. His is my truth. It is not pretty, but it is real. If you believe that every person's story deserves to be heard, no matter how difficult, please share this and subscribe for more truths that must be told.